Captain Daniel Cross knew the moment they boarded the San Lorenzo that none of them were leaving alive. He'd planned heists for 15 years. He'd raided Spanish galleons, Portuguese merchant fleets, even a Dutch East India Company convoy. He'd survived storms, battles, and betrayals. Survival was his specialty. But this was different. The San Lorenzo wasn't just carrying gold. She was carrying something the Spanish would kill to protect and die to recover. Something so valuable that the moment Cross and his crew took it, every warship in the Caribbean would hunt them without mercy or rest. Now, standing on her blood-soaked deck with his crew of 30 men, watching the Spanish captain die with a curse on his lips, Cross faced a terrible truth: they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. His first mate, John "Blackjack" Morgan, approached with a smoking pistol and a grim expression. "Captain, you need to see what's in the hold." Cross followed him below deck, past dying Spanish soldiers, through passages slick with blood, down into the treasure hold. What he saw there made his blood run cold. Not gold. Not silver. Not jewels. Papers. Documents. Maps. Intelligence reports. And one leather-bound journal bearing the royal seal of Spain. "God help us," Cross whispered. "This is the Spanish Crown's complete Caribbean intelligence network. Every spy. Every informant. Every planned military operation for the next 2 years." Morgan's face was pale. "If we try to sell this, Spain will mobilize every resource they have to kill us. If we try to give it back, our own people will slit our throats for cowardice. And if we keep it, we become the most wanted men in the New World," Cross finished. He looked at his crew gathering around them, understanding dawning on their faces. This wasn't a heist anymore. It was a death sentence they'd chosen for themselves. 6 hours earlier, the San Lorenzo had seemed like any other target. Cross had spotted her off the coast of Hispaniola, a Spanish merchant vessel, moderately armed, sailing alone. The intelligence he'd purchased from a corrupt harbor master said she carried payroll for the Santo Domingo garrison. 20,000 pieces of 8. Easy money for an experienced crew. The Vengeance, Cross's ship, had approached under false Portuguese colors. The Spanish captain had been cautious but not alarmed. When they'd come alongside claiming to need navigation assistance, the San Lorenzo had even lowered a ladder. That's when Cross and 30 men had swarmed aboard. The Spanish crew had fought hard, too hard for simple merchant sailors. These men fought like soldiers, with discipline and coordination that spoke of military training. Cross had realized immediately something was wrong, but by then, they were committed. The battle had been brutal. The Spanish captain, a scarred veteran named Cordova, had rallied his men into a defensive line on the quarterdeck. They'd held for 20 minutes, killing 5 of Cross's crew before weight of numbers overwhelmed them. Cross had put his pistol to Cordova's head. "Surrender your cargo and your crew lives." Cordova had laughed, actually laughed, blood running from his mouth. "You fool. You think this is about cargo? You've just killed every man on your ship." "What are you talking about?" "The documents below," Cordova gasped. "You've taken the Crown's intelligence archive. They'll hunt you across 3 oceans. You'll pray for death before they're done with you." Cross had shot him then, but the words echoed. Now, in the treasure hold, Cross understood. The Spanish hadn't been transporting gold. They'd been moving the Caribbean Intelligence Command's entire operational archive to a new secure location. Every document cataloged a spy network that had taken decades to build. Names, locations, codes, planned operations, troop movements, fleet deployments. "This is worth more than gold," Blackjack said quietly. "The British would pay £100,000 for this. Maybe more. And Spain would pay $1 million to get it back, and kill us anyway," Cross countered. He looked at the papers scattered around them. This wasn't just intelligence. This was power. The kind that started wars and toppled governments. The kind that made men targets. One of his crew, a young Irish pirate named Sean, spoke up. "So what do we do, Captain? Burn it?" "Burn 100,000 pounds, another crew member protested. "Are you mad?" Voices rose in argument. Some wanted to sell it to the British. Others wanted to ransom it back to Spain. A few wanted to destroy it and disappear. Cross raised his hand for silence. "Here's what we know. The Spanish crown knows we have these documents. Cordova surely sent up signal flags before we boarded. They know what ship we're sailing. By now, every Spanish warship within 300 miles is being mobilized to hunt us." He let that sink in. "But they don't know what we'll do with this intelligence. And that gives us one advantage: we're unpredictable. They have to plan for every possibility, us selling it, ransoming it, or using it ourselves." "Using it how?" Blackjack asked. Cross smiled grimly. "If we're dead men anyway, why not make it count? Why not use this intelligence to pull off something so audacious that they write songs about it for the next 100 years? He pulled out a specific document, fleet movements showing a Spanish treasure convoy route with minimal protection. "Gentlemen," Cross said, "we're going to rob the Spanish treasury fleet. And we're going to do it using their own secrets against them." The Vengeance sailed north while Cross and his senior crew studied the stolen documents by lantern light in his cabin. What they'd found was extraordinary. The intelligence archive detailed not just spy networks, but the Spanish Navy's complete operational plans for the next 6 months. Fleet movements. Convoy routes. Defense weaknesses. Supply schedules. One document in particular caught Cross's attention: the annual treasure convoy from Veracruz to Havana. Usually, such convoys traveled with 4 warships as escort, impossible to attack. But according to these plans, this year's convoy would sail with only 2 escorts. The other ships were being diverted to deal with a British naval threat near Jamaica, a threat the Spanish believed was real but Cross now knew was just posturing with no actual attack planned. "The convoy leaves Veracruz in 3 days, Cross said, spreading the map. 40 million pieces of 8. The combined colonial revenue from Mexico for the entire year. With only 2 escort warships." Blackjack studied the route. "Even with light escort, those warships are first-rate naval vessels. We're one ship with 30 men. This is suicide." "It would be," Cross agreed. "If we attack them conventionally. But we won't." He pulled out another document, the Spanish Navy's recognition signals and passwords for friendly vessels. "We'll approach flying Spanish colors using these stolen signals. They'll think we're a naval escort ship coming to join the convoy. By the time they realize we're not, we'll be alongside the treasure ship." "And the 2 warships?" someone asked. "We'll handle them with this." Cross produced a third document, detailed schematics of Spanish warship designs, including their powder magazine locations. "We board the treasure ship, use it as a shield while we transfer the gold, then we blow the magazine on one warship and disable the other with chains shot to her rigging. In the confusion, we escape." His crew stared at him. "That's the most insane plan I've ever heard," Blackjack said. Then he grinned. "I love it." But young Sean looked troubled. "Captain, even if this works, even if we get the treasure, we're still dead men. Spain won't stop hunting us. Neither will the British once they realize we have intelligence we're not sharing." Cross nodded. "You're right. That's why after this heist, we're going somewhere no European power can reach us. We're going to sail beyond the Caribbean, beyond the Atlantic. We're going to the Indian Ocean, maybe Madagascar. Places where Spanish and British law doesn't reach. We'd be leaving everything," Sean said. "Our homes. Our families. Our lives. We left those behind the moment we boarded the San Lorenzo," Cross said quietly. Now we're choosing what we die for. Do we die running and hiding, picked off one by Spanish hunters? Or do we die rich, legendary, and free, having pulled off the greatest pirate heist in history? The cabin fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, Blackjack spoke. I'm in. I've got nothing to go back to anyway. Might as well make my death worth something. One by one, the others agreed. Even Sean, though his voice trembled. Cross felt the weight of what he was doing. He was leading these men to almost certain death. But he was giving them a choice in how they died. And the chance, however slim, of surviving as legends. Then we sail for Veracruz, Cross said. We've got 3 days to intercept that convoy. 3 days to prepare for the heist that will either make us immortal or get us killed trying. Probably both, Blackjack said. Cross smiled grimly. Probably both. 2 days later, the Vengeance approached the Spanish convoy flying the Spanish naval ensign and using the stolen recognition signals. Cross stood at the helm wearing a captured Spanish captain's uniform, hat pulled low, hoping none of the warship captains would look too closely. Behind him, his crew wore stolen Spanish sailor clothes and moved with practiced deception across the deck. The convoy consisted of 3 ships, the treasure galleon Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, massive and gold-laden, sailing in the center, and 2 escort warships, the San Felipe and Santa Teresa, flanking her on either side. As the Vengeance approached, signal flags went up from the San Felipe, identify yourself. Cross had prepared for this. He raised flags spelling out the stolen recognition code from the captured documents. Then added, Naval Escort San Miguel reporting to join convoy as ordered. A tense minute passed. Cross could see officers on the warship's deck examining them through spyglasses. Then the San Felipe signaled back, Welcome San Miguel. Take position astern of Concepcion. Cross exhaled slowly. They were in. The Vengeance maneuvered into position behind the treasure ship, close enough to see crew members moving on her deck, hear the creak of her rigging. The Concepcion was even larger up close, a floating fortress designed to carry unimaginable wealth across oceans. For 6 hours, they sailed in formation. Cross's crew maintained their disguise perfectly, even waving to Spanish sailors on the treasure ship. The sun climbed toward noon. The moment of attack approached. Cross had chosen noon for specific reasons, the crew change for watch duty, the traditional meal break that left fewer men at battle stations, the sun directly overhead creating harsh shadows that would hide his men's movements. At exactly noon, Cross gave the signal. The Spanish flag came down. A black flag went up. Gun ports on the Vengeance opened, revealing cannons loaded with chain shot, designed to destroy rigging, not hulls. Fire! Cross roared. The broadside was perfectly aimed. Chain shot screamed across the water, hitting the San Felipe's rigging, shredding sails and lines. Her mainmast cracked and toppled, crashing across her deck, tangling everything in a mess of canvas and rope. Before the other warship could react, the Vengeance surged forward, pulling alongside the Concepcion. Grappling hooks flew. Boarding planks crashed down. Board her! Cross screamed, leading the charge himself. His 30 men swarmed onto the treasure ship. The Spanish crew, caught completely by surprise during their meal break, scrambled to defend themselves. Cross shot the Concepcion's first officer in the chest, then cut down a sailor trying to raise the alarm. Around him, his crew fought with desperate fury. They knew this had to be fast, every second gave the remaining warship time to respond. Blackjack led 10 men straight to the ship's wheel, securing control of the helm. Others fought toward the captain's cabin where the ship's officers were trapped. The treasure hold could wait, first they needed to control the vessel. The Concepcion's captain, a gray-haired veteran named Ortega, emerged from his cabin with sword drawn and rallied his crew into a defensive line on the quarterdeck. "You're dead men!" Ortega shouted at Cross. The Santa Teresa will blow you out of the water. Cross glanced over. The remaining warship was indeed coming about, her cannon ports opening, preparing to fire on the pirates even if it meant damaging the treasure ship. Blackjack! Cross screamed. Execute plan now. His first mate nodded and disappeared below deck with 5 men, carrying a barrel of gunpowder and a long fuse. This was the desperate part. The part where everything could go wrong. The Santa Teresa opened fire with half her broadside, trying to hit the Vengeance without destroying the treasure ship. Cannonballs screamed overhead, one punching through the Concepcion's mizzen sail, another slamming into the railing where Cross had been standing seconds before. But Cross wasn't trying to fight the warship. He was buying time. Secure Captain Ortega. Cross ordered, and 2 of his men wrestled the Spanish captain into submission, binding his hands. You're going to order your crew to stand down, or I'll burn this ship with everyone on it. Never. Ortega spat. Cross pulled out a torch. Blackjack is below deck right now placing charges near your powder magazine. 1 spark, and this whole ship goes up. Your crew dies, the treasure sinks, and Spain gets nothing. Is that what you want? Ortega's face went pale. He looked at his crew, young men, old sailors, boys barely past childhood. He was a professional officer, a man who valued duty above all. But he valued his men more. Stand down, Ortega said quietly. Then louder, all crew, stand down. Drop your weapons. The Spanish sailors, seeing their captain defeated and hearing about explosives near the powder magazine, reluctantly obeyed. Cross grabbed Ortega and dragged him to the rail facing the Santa Teresa. Signal your escort. Tell them to back off or you'll be killed and the ship will be destroyed. The warship had ceased firing, her captain clearly trying to figure out what was happening. Through a speaking trumpet, Cross heard, Captain Ortega. Report your status. Ortega looked at Cross, then at his crew, then made his decision. This is Captain Ortega. The pirates have taken control. They've placed explosives near the magazine. Do not fire or they'll blow the ship. A long pause. Then, we cannot let pirates steal the king's treasure. Then the treasure sinks. Cross shouted back. And you explain to Madrid why you chose the king's gold over Spanish lives. Another agonizing pause. Finally, we're holding fire. But you won't escape. We'll follow you to hell itself. Good enough, Cross muttered. He turned to his crew. Start transferring the gold. Fast. His men swarmed into the Concepcion's hold. What they found exceeded even the intelligence reports. Iron-bound chests of silver pieces of 8. Gold bars stacked like firewood. Bags of emeralds and pearls. Worked silver and gold artifacts. The wealth of an empire. They worked like demons, forming a human chain, passing chests from hand to hand, transferring them to the Vengeance. Every man knew they had limited time before more Spanish ships arrived. After 30 minutes, they'd transferred maybe a third of the treasure, still more wealth than any of them had imagined. Then Sean, standing watch, screamed, sails on the horizon. 3 ships approaching fast. Cross's blood went cold. He rushed to look. 3 Spanish warships were bearing down on them, having responded to the distress signals. They were out of time. That's all we can take. Cross ordered. Cut the grappling lines. Everyone back to the Vengeance. Blackjack emerged from below. Charges are set with 10-minute fuse. That'll give us time to clear before she goes up. Cross hesitated. The Concepcion still held millions in treasure. Blowing her up seemed wasteful. But Ortega was watching him. You won't do it. You're a pirate, not a monster. Cross met his eyes. Then he turned to Blackjack. Light the fuse. Let's give them something to remember us by. Ortega's face went white. You madman. My crew is still aboard. Then I suggest you start evacuating them, Cross said coldly. You've got 10 minutes. The Vengeance pulled away from the Concepcion with her hold crammed with stolen treasure and her deck crowded with exhausted, blood-soaked pirates. Behind them, Spanish sailors were frantically launching boats and abandoning the treasure ship. Captain Ortega stood on his quarterdeck, refusing to leave, shouting orders to save his men. The Santa Teresa came alongside the Concepcion to help with evacuation, distracted from pursuing the pirates. The three approaching warships were still 10 minutes away. We might actually make it, Sean said, barely believing it. Cross didn't answer. He was counting time, watching the Concepcion closely. At exactly 10 minutes, the charges Blackjack had placed near the powder magazine detonated. The explosion was apocalyptic. The Concepcion erupted in a fireball that could be seen for 20 miles. The blast wave knocked men off their feet on the Vengeance's deck. Burning debris rained down on the Santa Teresa, setting her sails on fire. The sound was like the world ending. When the smoke cleared, the mighty treasure galleon was gone, broken in half, sinking rapidly, taking millions in remaining treasure to the ocean floor. Cross felt no joy at the destruction. Only the cold calculation of what it meant. They just humiliated the Spanish Empire. Destroyed one of their greatest treasure ships. Stolen a portion of their annual revenue. Spain would never stop hunting them now. Never. Set course for the Atlantic Passage, Cross ordered. We're leaving the Caribbean. We're not stopping until we reach Madagascar. For 3 days, they sailed with Spanish warships in pursuit but never quite catching up. The Vengeance was fast, her crew motivated by survival. They pushed her to her limits. On the 4th day, they encountered British naval vessels. Cross considered trying to sell the stolen intelligence documents, but decided against it. The British would seize his ship, take the intelligence, and probably hang his crew anyway. Instead, he made a different choice. He burned the documents. Every page. Every secret. Every carefully gathered piece of intelligence. Captain, that's worth a fortune. Blackjack protested. That's worth our souls, Cross corrected. I'm a pirate, not a spy. I steal treasure, not secrets. Those documents made us targets of empires. Without them, we're just pirates who got lucky and robbed a Spanish ship. It wasn't quite true, Spain would still hunt them for the destroyed Concepcion, but it was closer to manageable. By the time they reached the Atlantic shipping lanes, Cross knew they'd never truly be safe again. But they'd done something remarkable. They'd pulled off a heist that would be talked about for generations. And they'd chosen how to die, not as skulking thieves, but as legends. That night, Cross divided the treasure among his crew. Each man received more wealth than they could have earned in 10 lifetimes of honest work. What will you do with your share? Cross asked Sean. The young Irishman looked at the gold in his hands. I don't know if I'll live long enough to spend it. But at least I'll die rich. Cross laughed, a genuine laugh for the first time in days. That's the spirit. He looked at his crew, exhausted, wounded, hunted men who'd chosen glory over survival. They'd crossed a line together, knowing they'd never cross back. Survival had never been the goal. From the moment they'd boarded the San Lorenzo and discovered those documents, they'd been dead men. But they'd chosen to die as something more than just forgotten criminals. They'd chosen to die as legends. 5 years later, a weathered sailor walked into a tavern in Madagascar and ordered rum with gold coins that bore Spanish markings. The bartender, a former pirate himself, recognized those coins. You were there, weren't you? On the Vengeance when Cross destroyed the Concepcion. The sailor, Sean, though he went by different names now, nodded slowly. I was there. The stories say Cross sailed into a hurricane rather than surrender to the Spanish fleet that finally cornered him. That he went down with his ship and all his remaining treasure. The stories are right, Sean confirmed. 6 months after Madagascar, the Spanish finally trapped us off the African coast. 3 warships against our 1. Cross could have surrendered. Could have begged for mercy. But he didn't. No. He stood at the helm and sailed straight into the worst storm I'd ever seen. Said if he was dying, it would be by God's hand, not Spain's. The Vengeance broke apart in the waves. 30 men went down with her. But not you. Sean smiled grimly. I was the only one who jumped ship before he sailed into that storm. Cross saw me do it. Our eyes met across the deck. He nodded once, giving me permission to survive. Then he turned his ship into hell itself. The bartender refilled Sean's drink. Do you regret it? Jumping ship while your captain chose death? Sean looked at his gold coins, the last remnants of the greatest pirate heist in history. Every day. But Cross taught me something important: survival isn't always the goal. Sometimes the goal is to die in a way that makes your life mean something. He raised his glass to an empty chair. To Captain Daniel Cross. Who chose legend over survival. And became both. The question for you is, would you make the same choice? When survival becomes impossible, what would you die for?